some of the wide receivers that came loose, maybe a Brown, Vincent Brown or something like that, or perhaps with the depth at the defensive line and get a team like Green Bay that may be interested in a trade to bring in a guy, that there may be some movement there, but really no. I mean, they brought in Boyd the other day, and other than that, Bird, at wide receiver. And other than that, they didn't sign anybody. So this is pretty much the roster as it's going to head into Pittsburgh, right? I mean, do you see any other real additions to the team? Not really when you're in game prep.
No, once you get to Wednesday, that would be the last day.
Right.
Not to say something won't happen next week at the bottom end of the roster, but once you get to Wednesday, and that was the one thing I thought when Stephen Hill got waived by the Jets, I thought he would be a logical pickup on waivers simply because he has so much talent. But he went through waivers, ended up signing on the practice squad in Carolina, which is another team with serious wide receiver issues. I was a little surprised Nate Burleson didn't make the club. Obviously, I understand why. He wasn't healthy, didn't get a chance to show. Wasn't a long-term answer by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a veteran guy who knows how to play in this league. It's just because if you look at the depth right now, I mean, we could talk all we want about, does Miles Austin have anything left? I don't know. Andrew Hawkins, I believe is best suited to play in the slot, but he's going to have to play a lot more outside now. But after that, the depth is it drops off the table. And when you have a guy who's done it at a pretty consistently high level in the NFL, I think they should have kept him around. But I understand the other aspect of it, too, and the fact that, the Browns don't consider themselves a significant contender. So you want to build for the future, and there's no use having a 12-year veteran who's basically already made it known that this would have been his last NFL season. So you can understand both aspects of it. I just, kind of feel bad for Brian Hoyer and to a certain degree if Johnny Manziel gets a chance down the line, because there's not much to throw to, let's be honest.
No, and I was mentioning that with them keeping Dre and Barnidge and Cameron, that I see a lot of 2 tight end sets and a lot, because those are all receivers that have good hands and that can help in the passing game. Barnidge, I think, is underrated, and I'll tell you, the little bit that I saw of Dre, and I've talked to some people in Arizona, a good pass-catching backup tight end there. Do you think I'm right, though? I mean, clearly they went with, 5, 6 wide receivers here once Moore comes off of the suspended list there, and they, like I said, they grabbed LaRon Bird, but that's it. They let Charles Johnson go to the practice squad. So you got to think they're going to rely on the depth there at tight end too.
Yeah, and obviously Jordan Cameron is by far the best receiver on that team.
Absolutely.
But I don't see it actually morphing into any kind of Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez type situation where you have these 2 stud tight ends that are
I never
really
said stud.
I
said guys that can catch the ball.
But yeah, I mean, they're going to have to do everything humanly possible, and if guys like Dre or Barnidge, offer better targets than Travis Benjamin or Taylor Gabriel or LaRon Bird, they're going to have to play more. So that's how you kind of morph into what you become offensively, and that's what Kyle Shanahan's got to figure out, is the fact, are we better with those guys on the field, or are we better with the backup receivers on the field? It remains to be seen, but either way, it just doesn't look good. I mean, I hate to not be optimistic, and week 1 of the NFL season, it's disappointing, and obviously I've said it time and time again, it's just not possible to replace a player like Josh Gordon. But I think Ray Farmer should have had a better backup plan, because, as we stated, he was well aware that this was coming down the pike.
For a long time coming. And you mentioned Taylor Gabriel. I'm excited about him. I do believe that that's one of those guys that they did find and that is going to contribute. I think he's got a chance to do some things. He's got a little bit of a spark from what we've seen of him there. And you mentioned Bird. What do you know about him, LaRon Bird? Does he have an opportunity to contribute something here or what? Because I'm not very familiar with him.
Well, he's a really big guy, really big, lengthy receiver, and that's obviously in vogue. And 6'4", 220. So picture, at least physically, certainly not comparing him, production-wise, but physically he's a Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey type with that kind of length and that kind of size. And I think that's what the Browns kind of got enamored with. And, he's had stops in Arizona and Dallas before. So, he certainly wasn't a finished product coming out of college. He went to Miami, kind of a raw kid. And anytime you see guys that big, they tend to struggle with separation. They have to become better route runners. But when you look at him, he should be the kind of guy, if he hits his ceiling as a player, they can really use on those back shoulder fades that everyone loves to throw now. And that's what I imagine the Browns are hopeful for. And you needed that, because if you look at, you talked about Taylor Gabriel. I mean, he's tiny. I tell you, Travis Benjamin's undersized. Now, obviously, Andrew Hawkins is thought of as mainly a slot receiver. So they needed badly to add some size to the wide receiver corps, and I think that's why they looked at a kid like Bird and said, let's bring him in and give him a chance.
I mean, those two basically are going to get a lot of the opportunities that a guy like Burleson would have got, because they didn't add anybody else, So we'll see how that works out. Also, a little, not surprised really, except for the Obaniah aspect of it, but when you look at the running backs, you got Ben Tate, who is going to be the guy that they give the ball to start things, but he is known for getting banged up from time to time. They back him up with 3 rookie running backs, and I like the potential. I even like what I hear about Glenn Winston, who they got from San Francisco. We've talked about Terrence West, and Isaiah Crowell is going to surprise some people. That is one that you talk about digging for gold in them bottom spots and finding undrafted free agents, and that's a guy in Crowell that we've talked about since before camp. And forget 100-some yards in a preseason game. I don't care about that, but I think you saw a little bit of what he's got. I mean, this was a guy who could have played with the big boys if he didn't get himself in trouble in college, and I think you see why. But 3 rookies backing up Ben Tate. Does that surprise you that they let Obaniah go?
No, not at all. And, I did, before when I was talking about not being optimistic, this is the one position where you can be optimistic. And I said, dating back to the off season, I thought, one of their best signings was bringing in Ben Tate, because, he's not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a very, very good NFL back, good vision, natural runner, tremendous cutback ability. People are going to love him there, and if he's healthy, which is always an issue, as you said, but you're not even going to get to guys like Kroll, because he's going to be the guy, and he's going to be a very good running back for Cleveland. He's going to be the bell cow. And the second part is Terrence West, because as a backup running back and a rookie, and small school obviously, so you always have a concern about those guys making the jump. But he's a big guy. He's got a lot of ceiling as a player. So I think if there's any position offensively that they really, really improved on, it's certainly at the running back position.
I'm with you too, and I'm excited too. Those guys are going to get a chance to play because it may be a passing league, but it is not a passing season. Cleveland Browns fans, I'm just telling you now, it's going to be a running league as far as Cleveland is concerned for this season, and I'm fine with that. I like the revamped offensive line, and I like these guys. I like Tate, and I like the young guys that they've got coming up behind them. I agree with Vashawn in the chat room. I have questions on Tate being the guy, but I like what he's definitely brings better than what they've had at the position in the last few years. But I like those young guys coming up behind. Like you said, you've got 3 of them with different skill sets. They're not all going to hit, but you don't need them all to hit. You need to find a guy there. So out of the 3, you're giving yourself odds to pull one of them. And I'm telling you, I like West, but I really like Crowell too. I think he may sneak up on people this season.
Yeah, I think 6 weeks into the season, I think obviously, part of the reason is because I don't think they're going to be able to get the ball to Jordan Cameron consistently. So this is a part of the statement about to say. But I think 5 or 6 weeks into the season, it's going to be pretty clear that Ben Tate is the best skill position player on the Browns. I think people in Cleveland are going to be pleasantly surprised when they get to see him play when the real bullets are flying, because he's was a pretty darn good back in Houston behind a tremendous back, and at times he outplayed him in Arian Foster. So I think he's the one guy that you're going to be able to count on week to week, and I think people are going to be very happy with him.
All right, John, before we let you go, let's go around. I want to get your picks. Who you think is going to win these divisions and go to the Super Bowl, and we'll get a Browns record on you first. Let's go around the NFC. Who do you got coming out of the East, my man?
Well, it's got to be Philadelphia almost by default. It's a bad division. The Eagles have a very good offense, significant holes on the defensive side of the ball, but that said, I don't think the rest of the teams in the East look capable of reaching 8 wins, any of them. So I think that's sort of the Eagles by default.
All right. How about the NFC West? Who do you got coming out there? I like, man, the way them teams are competing, man. I think that's going to be, not just this year, the next few years, a competitive division.
Yeah, I think the 49ers are really, one of those logical teams that are going to take a step back. Too many injury issues. Navarro Bowman's not going to be there for at least half the season. Then you have the suspension issues. Alden Smith gone for 9 games. Ray McDonald now is in play to get suspended for a significant period of time. Too many problems for San Francisco. So Seattle pretty much jumps up, obviously, reigning Super Bowl champions. But I thought San Francisco was still more talented than them, 1 through 53. Now I think with their steps back, I think the Seahawks are now the most talented team in football. So even though it's difficult to repeat, I think they're going to come out of the NFC West again.
How about the South? New Orleans, Carolina, Tampa Bay with a new coach, Atlanta looking to bounce back here. Another division that I see could be quite competitive.
Yeah, I think the Saints are really primed for a Super Bowl run. If they can figure out how to win away from the Superdome on a little bit more of a consistent basis, there's a very, very good chance that they'll be playing in Glendale come February. Explosive offensively, it's almost impossible to beat him in New Orleans. So basically, if they go 8-0 at home, all they got to do is go 4-4 on the road, and that's a 12-win team. So I think the Saints are in really, really good shape.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. I've got them in Seattle going in the championship game myself. And how about the NFC North? Chicago, Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota with Norv and Bridgewater and all of that. Who do you see coming out of the North?
I think this is the most competitive division. I think every team has a chance to win it if things go their way, even Minnesota, because I think Mike Zimmer's got that team going in the right direction, and they're going to have similar to New Orleans when you saw the difference when Steve Spagnuolo was replaced by Rob Ryan. I think you're going to see a spike defensively for the Vikings. But, at the end of the day, Green Bay has the one big advantage, and that's Aaron Rodgers. So if he's under center for 16 games, I think they'll find a way to win the division. However, Green Bay is one of those teams that have the national reputation, not nearly as talented as people think they are. Aaron Rodgers is kind of going to have to carry that team.
So you got Philly, Seattle, New Orleans, and Green Bay. Who's your wild cards in the NFC?
I think Chicago, because of the explosive skill position people. You think about Cutler, Jay Cutler, Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, Martellus Bennett at tight end, Matt Forte. Just an offensive juggernaut.